So I've had a few people over the last few weeks who have reached out to me on the side and said, "Hey, how do you do the day trading thing? What do you look for? What's the process you kind of go through?" I'm just going to walk you through what I did on Friday. This is very typical for a day of how I day trade and engage. So on Friday, I actually got up, and this is what it's called Trade Ideas. This is a stock scanner. And this is my default setup for the morning, specifically looking at like morning gappers or morning gap down, gap up or gap down. So I'm going to set the time frame here so you can actually see what I saw when I got up at 6:30 in the morning on Friday, and it was the 24th. So essentially, this is what I saw. I saw Tough Built TBLT had gapped up 75% about 6:30 in the morning whenever I logged on. These other ones, SLS, EPM, BHAT, didn't really excite me. This one right here caught my eye. So 75% gap up. I wanted to know what's going on, what was causing that. So I clicked into it, looked at the news. On 6:24 in the morning, well, 6:24, 6:30 in the morning, there wasn't really any news. It was just talking about, we had some pre-market movers. There was this article about why it surged today, and there's really nothing in here that would make me say, there's a strong catalyst behind this. It seemed like it was just moving on its own for no apparent reason, which is scary because sometimes these stocks obviously can be manipulated. You notice here the float is also 1 million. So the float is the number of shares that are actually publicly available. So just like supply and demand, if somebody comes in and purchases, let's just say half of that 1 million in one fell swoop, like an institution or a big brokerage, obviously the price is going to spike very quickly. Likewise, if somebody dumped 500,000 shares, the price is going to drop very quickly. So it's a very volatile stock. So I was really nervous because there's no news, there's no catalyst. The float is very, very low, which means this is probably the riskiest stock you can play. But nothing else was really catching my eye that day. So I went over to StockTwits, which is basically Twitter for stocks, and I did a search for, TBLT to see what people were saying about it. What's the sentiment? I'm not going to go back to Friday morning at 6:30. This is stuff they're talking about right now. But it was, typical Wall Street bets guys saying this is going to the moon. Come on, guys, buy more. Let's push this up. The bears are going to, lose their shirts. Whatever. Typical stuff. I don't buy into any of that kind of stuff. It's all about what the stock is doing and the price action. But I wanted to know if there was anything that was out in the social community that was basically driving or catalyzing the movement of price. And what I noticed was that there really was nothing. It was just, it was getting interest from retail traders. It was moving obviously because of institutional buys. So then I went over to Benzinga and took a look over here. This is actually, industry standard news that is being released. And you see on Friday by 6:30, this was the only thing that was out there, 5:35 a.m. It was talking about, again, people, here's the stocks that are moving. Okay, but why? There was no reason for it. There was nothing really in the prior day that would have, created a strong catalyst. There was a Form 8 corporate statement that was released, but that's a very, very weak catalyst. So obviously, there's no reason for this thing to be moving. Zero. Outside of people are just excited about it, buying for whatever reason, which was telling me the institutions are simply manipulating the stock. That's all it was. So typically, I kind of sit back and watch those just to see if I can get in on the action. So this is what the stock chart actually looked like at 6:30 in the morning, my local time. So you see it right here. This is about the time I woke up. You see that it was originally 181 and now it's up to 312. So it's up almost 75%. I'm not going to go in right here. Obviously, we're at the high end of a move. It has broken previous resistance. So previous resistance would have been right here at that point. So it obviously has broken that, which is a good sign. Now, if it can hold above that, happy day. Uh, this support would be right here on that line. So if it starts trading between those 2 points, it'll be basically choppy and in a consolidation pattern. So I started to watch this and was looking for an opportunity to make a quick, dollar or two. And so let me just go ahead and start forwarding here. You can see what the stock did. It's kind of bouncing around. Then it went up. It broke that resistance point, and this is where I went long. I actually did take a long position right here when it broke up with that strong movement up. I actually went in about right there, and I put my stop loss down there, and I put an arbitrary take profit up there, but I'm very discretionary on these kinds of moves. I don't rotely say, 1.5 my risk or 2 times my risk. I'm going to set my limit and I'm just going to let it ride. That's not the way I trade, especially in the pre-market, especially with a stock like this. I'm going to be very discretionary and take my profits whenever I see that the move is starting to kind of putter out. So I see that it kind of goes back down, then it holds the 8 EMA, this yellow line, pretty well. So that's an 8-period EMA. It's looking back 8 minutes. It's basically a moving average. Down here is the 20 EMA, and then here's the 50 EMA. So 20 1-minute candles, 8 1-minute candles, 50 1-minute candles. So right now we've got a strong trend. So the 8 is over the 20, over the 50. Very strong trend. And it's bouncing off of the 8 EMA nicely. So I stayed in. Oh, there's a big one. There's a big drop. This is when I actually got out. So I didn't make a whole lot on this one. So when I saw that when I broke the 8 EMA, I actually closed my position. So I went in at 316 and I got out about 325. So that big spike that you saw there at 7 o'clock, that happens every single day on every single stock. So that is basically the overnight orders being printed to the tape. There's a lot of dark pools that actually, to me, it doesn't seem like it's something that should be legal. It seems very under the table, very underhanded, but it happens. The large institutions, brokers, different brokerages actually have orders, buys and sells that have happened overnight, and it always gets printed to the tape at 7 o'clock. And so this massive spike up and down was not truly buy and selling at 7 o'clock. It was actually at 7 o'clock that those orders that are happen overnight before the market opens at 3 o'clock, my Central Time, my time, those get printed to the tape and you see that massive volatility. So I like to get out before 7 o'clock because you never know which direction it's going to go after that price gets printed. So I was just sitting here kind of watching, and you're going to see a lot more volatility here in just a second right there. Boom, boom, boom. That is very atypical. Usually you see the 7 o'clock, and you may see another one at 7:10ish, and then it's done. And those massive spikes in volatility of overnight orders actually being printed to the tape are done. This one had a lot of volatility around 7:10, which made me very nervous. So again, I just sat back and watched. I took my little, 316 to 325, not my 9-cent profit, and I was just watching it go. Again, this is very risky, probably the riskiest type of stock that you can possibly trade. But institutions are in, the institutions are playing, institutions are trying to take retail's money, and a lot of retail people on StockTwits were talking about this. So we had a lot of, I hate to sound crass, but a lot of dummies on StockTwits and retail who were buying in and getting knocked out. A lot of dummies who were, shorting and getting knocked out whenever it would start to go up in a bullish trend. So I wanted to ride the institutional wave, and that's what I always try to do. I don't ride when the retail traders are doing something. I ride whenever I see the institutions doing something. So it's kind of like a surfboard, somebody riding a surfboard going out into the ocean. You want to watch that big wave start to kind of come in, and then you move your surfboard towards it and you ride it. So that's what I try to do is see the institution move, get on board, enter into the position, whether it be long or short, and ride that wave for as long as the institution wants that wave to ride. So I'm looking for a wave. So far I'm not seeing one. You see some consolidation, and again, things have changed. Remember, my resistance was here, my support was here. Now it's changed. Resistance is there, and support seems to be here. So it's a very, very thin channel. and I'm looking for a change in trend outside of that channel. So it looks like it might. Yep, yep. It broke support right there. Oh, nope, it held. Support held. What's it going to do? Oh, nope, broke support. Heck, yeah. Bulls want it to stay up there. It wants to stay at support. So I'm watching it. I'm watching it. We're getting close to the 8:30 open Central Time. So I'm just sitting here watching it. And I do not want to trade this stock into the open because it could break big time up or it could break big time down. But it's going to do one or the other. So I'm just sitting here watching it. I'm looking for a confirmation at 8:30 of which direction it's going to go. I'm looking for that wave. That was a big institutional buy right there. Well, it was probably a institutional purchase, but it hit some stops, and so it knocked some people out. So it looked bigger than it actually was. So here we're getting very, very close to the opening bell. Still doesn't show any indication of what it's going to do. It's below previous support. Well, there's some strong buy sentiment here. I'm starting to set up my brokerage order for a go long position whenever I see this, but I haven't executed it yet. So I'm still waiting. Once I see this one right here, so a very strong bullish candle, and then this one right here is an engulfing bullish candle, engulfing green, very strong indicator that this is going to explode on the upside. So at this point, what I did is I went long right at this point because I had previously set up my order. Very, very volatile stock, so I had to set my stop very low because this thing's going to bounce all over the freaking place. So I set it way down low. I set my take profit really, really high because I'm just going to watch this thing play out and see if I can ride it. Again, this one right here is a pretty big gamble. So I'm watching it, watching it. And again, I didn't have my take profit up here. I just, I basically had it real high, and I'm just watching for a change in trend. Again, the ATMA is my change in trend. That tells me to get out. So right now it's still holding the ATMA. It's gone up and up and up. And there it broke it. That's when I got out. I closed my position. Closed my position at about 365. My going in was 327. I went in with about 3,000 shares, so the difference there would be, roughly about 1,600 bucks. So at that point, I said I'm going to sit back and watch it. It's probably going to change direction. Unfortunately, there were no shorts, no shares available to short on my brokerage, so I couldn't ride it the other way. Just kind of had to wait for the long positions on this one. And here's another attempt to go up. Here's retail trying. And this one right here, the distribution, the green distribution, these indicators are another thing I use to actually decide to go in or not. This is a very weak distribution, even though it's a strong bullish candle up, and it did bounce off of the 20 EMA fairly nicely. Usually that's a pretty good indication that it's going to go up. I thought that this specific move had probably exhausted itself. The green distribution is not very good. The brown line, or the brown area, is not above the red line like it was over here. Over here, brown was above red strongly. The green distribution, this signifies the amount of, uh, when people are purchasing, which direction is it going? Is it going the long side or is it going the short side? So this was very, very strong towards the long side for all purchases within the candles. This right here, even though I've got a strong green candle up, it's not a lot of buying as far as a distribution standpoint. So I saw this and said, I'm not going to go back in, even though it's a really strong candle. I think it's probably exhausted itself. So let's see what happens. Yep, that's exactly what happened. So I'm just watching. Again, distributions are really strong down here. Unfortunately, if my brokerage had stocks to short, I would have shorted right here because there was a strong distribution down. The brown area was below the red. That's just one of the criteria that I use to go in. I'm very discretionary now. I don't do any of the strategies that I used to do. I've tried them all, and all of them fail me. So I just go off of stock action, what I've learned, my gut feel, what I research as far as the due diligence of looking at Benzinga, looking at StockTwits, looking at the news, looking at my trade ideas, stock scanner. and ultimately using indicators as an input to a discretionary position, whether I'm going to go in or not. So this one just kind of went into a channel for a very, very long time, was moving around pretty much sideways. And you could scalp this up and down, but man, it's really dangerous because see how the sentiment is really going bearish now. So again, I no shares to short on my broker, so I only had one way to go, and that's long. So at that point, I basically lost interest. It's obviously in a bearish trend. It lost its momentum. The fun of the day was over. But you did see that, kind of the process I went through when I woke up and saw that it had gapped up overnight, had a very strong gap. No news. Catalysts, news catalyst is obviously the best because that usually has pretty good uh, fundamentals behind it on why it's moving. This one right here was just moving because somebody was manipulating the stock. Somebody who had a bunch of money, like a brokerage or institution, was manipulating the stock all day long on Friday. Well, at least in the morning, the pre-market and the open, they were manipulating it big time. So even though market manipulation by an institution or brokerage is legal and it is very risky, there are times where it actually works in your favor if you can spot the wave of when it's being manipulated and get behind them and then get out before the manipulation turns into the institution, the brokerage is stealing retail's money, because that's the entire reason they do it, is to get retail to jump in, fear of missing out. This thing went way up, so you got a bunch of retail traders who are scared, 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 and they jump in here, and then they get knocked out because it's a sudden downtrend. Just basically the brokerage is stealing from retail right here. So they really want retail to jump in way up high so that they can still hit their stop loss and steal their shares down here, and then further manipulate it from there on. Later in the day, it did have a little bit of a run, but pretty inconsequential. I didn't really do much more with it after the open. But anyway, that's in a nutshell what I kind of look at and how I trade. And this was just one example. Obviously, there are many different examples, and my approach is primarily the same in each one, but a little bit different depending on the float, depending on the news, depending on the sentiment on StockTwits, depending on what the chart's doing, because not every chart is the same. So the chart tells the story, and as long as you can read the story and understand the market psychology to a small degree, you tend to be more profitable. So I did basically two trades on Friday. That's it. It's only two trades I did the entire day. The ones that I just showed you. So I did a trade here, a small little 9 cent gain. It's inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. It was 9 cents times 3,000 shares that time too. Both times I went in with 10,000 bucks basically. So 3,000 shares times 9 cents is what I made on that little bitty move. And then I went in $10,000 or 3,000 shares on the larger move, and you know made my money for the day. So anyway, hopefully this is helpful, and just kind of illustrates the way that I trade. It's not the right, I'm not saying it's the right way to trade, just the way I trade, and it works for me. So take care.